I didn't even know there'd been an engagement dinner until the next morning. Not our engagement dinner, of course. Not that Rachel had ever mentioned any dinner plans at all. No, I found out the way you learn most of the truths you weren't supposed to see. Through other people's social media posts, slipped into your feed at the exact wrong time of day. I was still half asleep, the blinds barely cracked, scrolling on my phone the way I always do before I even get out of bed. And there it was, a dimly lit, private dining room. The kind you have to reserve weeks in advance, the kind with velvet curtains to block the view from the main floor. I recognized the place instantly. It was a restaurant downtown that Rachel and I had always called a someday place. As in someday when we have something big to celebrate, we'll go there. I guess we wasn't part of the equation anymore. The photo that stopped me cold was the first in a carousel. A long table dressed in white linen and scattered with candles. In the middle, Rachel, wearing that emerald green dress she said she'd bought for work functions. She was leaning in toward Daniel Reed, laughing, her wine glass raised in mid-toast. Their shoulders were so close I couldn't see daylight between them. His hand, big, steady, too familiar, was resting against her waist in that subtle, proprietary way men use when they want people to know she's with me. Swipe. Another photo. A candid, clearly taken from across the table. She's looking at him like he's the only person in the room. He's holding her gaze, smiling the kind of smile you can't fake. The kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Swipe. A group *T this time, maybe a dozen people. Everyone dressed up, glasses clinking. And in the captions. God. The captions were phrases like, private celebration after hours bottle with popping cork sparkles, and best wishes to the happy couple, and couldn't have picked a more perfect night for the announcement. Not tagged to me, of course. Why would they be? I wasn't there. I wasn't even in the loop. My stomach sank in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. I clicked through to one of the poster's profiles. Someone from Rachel's work I'd met only once at a company picnic. More photos. Same dinner. Same smiles. In one, Rachel and Daniel are standing together near the bar, her hand resting on his forearm, his head tilted close to say something in her ear. She's laughing, eyes crinkled, the kind of easy joy you can't fake. The longer I stared, the louder the static in my head became. When she came into the kitchen an hour later, dressed in workout leggings and an oversized hoodie, you'd think nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted coffee, like she hadn't spent the previous night in a scene pulled straight out of someone else's engagement party album. Busy night at work? I asked, keeping my voice casual. She didn't even blink. Yeah, a client dinner. Family style thing, nothing formal. Family style, I repeated. Yeah, shared plates, casual. The client likes that. Daniel was there too, just making sure everyone was comfortable. She was pouring coffee, back to me, voice perfectly even. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her glance over her shoulder. Funny, I said. It looked a little more *mate than that. Her brow furrowed. Looked. I saw some photos, I said, shrugging like it was nothing. People post everything these days. She turned back to her mug, took a slow sip. You're reading too much into it, Ethan. It was work. That's all. That's all. She didn't flinch when she said it. She didn't get defensive or over-explain. Just slid the answer across the table like a receipt, daring me to sign and walk away. But the thing is, once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. Once you've caught a glimpse of the way someone looks at another person when they think you're not watching, it gets under your skin. It starts whispering at the edges of your thoughts, telling you to rewind the tape on the past few months and notice all the moments you dismissed as nothing. And in that instant, standing in the kitchen with the smell of fresh coffee between us, I realized I'd been doing that, dismissing things, for a long time. The disabled shared location she brushed off as a phone update glitch. The last-minute late meetings that seemed to happen more often than not. The expensive dinners she said were team bonding. That green dress. The way she'd started locking her phone again, after years of leaving it unlocked on the counter. I didn't say any of that out loud. Not yet. I just nodded, took the coffee she offered, and let her think the conversation was over. But inside, something had shifted. I'd seen enough to know this wasn't about one dinner. This was the tip of something much bigger, and if I wanted answers, I was going to have to dig them out myself. I didn't start with rage. I started with a spreadsheet, because that's what you do when your gut tells you a story your mind refuses to believe. I opened my laptop that night after Rachel went to bed and dragged months of life into cells. Dates, times, charges, locations, notes. The sound of the keys felt clinical, safer than saying out loud what I already knew. The first line item was the one we always joked about, shared location. We turned it on during the freeze a couple winters ago, just in case one of us got stuck on the road. It had been off for weeks. She said it bugged her battery after an update. I believed her for about a day. Then the pattern clicked. Whenever she had a late meeting, the little beacon went dark around 5 and came back to life after midnight. It wasn't random. It was timed like a curtain drop. Receipts told me a different truth than she did. I pulled statements from our joint card and found charges from bars we'd never visited together. Rooftop places with velvet ropes, lounges that required reservations, a whiskey bar that only does table service after 10. There were craft cocktails with names that sounded like dares and small plates priced like rent. It didn't match the woman who told me she was too tired for date night, but somehow had energy for a last round across town. Then came the luxury items, the ones that still had tags when I found the bags tucked behind coats in the guest closet. A pair of stilettos she couldn't walk 2 blocks in. A silk scarf from a store that wraps your purchase like it's a christening. A tiny perfume bottle heavy enough to anchor a boat. I remembered each one because they all hit my card. I'm not cheap. I just know the difference between a treat and a costume. High-end cosmetics started arriving like clockwork. Boxes stacked by the door, little sample vials rattling around inside. When I asked, she called them work-appropriate. When I looked up the brand line, I learned it photographs flawlessly under warm lighting. Candlelight, to be precise. Her phone learned new tricks, too. Notifications went from pings to whispers. Preview banners disappeared. She took bathroom breaks with the phone in her back pocket and came back wearing a brand new face. Lighter, brighter, like she'd stepped into a better version of the evening happening somewhere I wasn't. Weekends changed shape. Rachel used to treat Saturday morning like sacred, slow coffee, a run around the lake together if it wasn't already 1,000 degrees. Suddenly she was up before dawn, leggings and an oversized crew neck, meeting a friend for a workout. When I offered to join, she smiled with that careful kindness that keeps you at arm's length. It's more of a class thing. Girls' accountability. She'd leave at 6 and come back after 10, freshly showered, hair blown out in a way no gym could explain, appetite ruined because she'd grabbed something quick. Transfers started popping up in our banking app. Small at first, labeled to her sister, prep, deposit hold, rehearsal soft. The labels felt inside jokey, like I'd missed the part where I learned the language. When I asked, she waved it off as helping with family stuff. I'm all for family. I just prefer not to fund a mystery. Reservations became their own breadcrumb trail. I recognized the names because they were places I had tried to book for anniversaries and been told, private rooms only. The charges matched deposit schedules on restaurants with curtains, wine walls, and policies about guest discretion. Our calendar had blank spaces where those dinners lived. Her camera roll had nothing but architecture and plates arranged like art. No faces, as if the night itself were classified. I found an email in the shared inbox we used to keep contractor invoices. It wasn't meant for me. I only saw it because the subject line said, confirmation. It was from a concierge service I didn't know we had. Your private dining room is secured. Chef will accommodate dairy-free. Cake to be presented after second course. For who? For how many? The attachment showed a seating diagram with 8 circles and 2 stars side by side at the head of the table. Stars like someone had decided who belonged in the frame and who didn't. Somewhere in all of this I stopped feeling like a boyfriend and started feeling like a financing plan. I noticed the rhythm of it. Her asks got smaller in words and bigger in cost. Can you cover the card this month? Can you move a little more into the joint? It'll even out after the quarter. The even out never came. What did come were line items that read like a map of rooms I'd never entered. I wanted to tell myself there was a benign explanation. Work culture, client expectations, a sister who overplans. But the anomalies stacked like bricks until they made a wall I couldn't see over. It wasn't just money. There was the sudden seriousness about privacy. Her, who used to leave her phone face up, now turning its screen down like it needed a nap. She changed her lock screen to a generic sunset. She disabled contact photos. She started saying, "It's just work," like a password you repeat to convince a door to open. On 2 different Fridays, a driver charge hit my inbox for an app we never use because we both have cars. The pickup was our building. The drop-off was a hotel on the river with no parking lot by design. "We used the bar for a meeting," she told me when I asked why she'd been there. "It's quiet." The charge time was 12:41 a.m. Quiet for who? In our kitchen drawer, beneath warranties and appliance manuals, I found folded paper, printed receipts, the kind they give you when you sign for something substantial. One was for a tasting menu, 2 portions, notes beside each course. She prefers lighter rose. He likes rye-based cocktails. I rubbed my thumb over the ink until it smudged and felt ridiculous, like a man trying to rub his way back in time. I remember the exact moment the floor tipped. It wasn't dramatic. It was a Monday night, the kind where you both pretend to watch a show while playing on your phones. A notification flashed on her screen before she could catch it. Private dining. Reminder for Thursday, party name, Reed. She clicked it away and said she needed water, like hydration could erase a breadcrumb. Daniel Reed had been background noise to me. Someone from her team whose name came up in casual stories about deadlines and clients who wanted changes at the 11th hour. I had never attached a waist-resting hand to him until that photograph. After the reminder, I attached the bill. I built a timeline. I'm not proud of how good I became at it. I cross-referenced her gym departures with charges at places that don't sell protein shakes. I matched cash withdrawals to boutique store locations that don't accept cards for discretion purchases. I plotted every sister prep transfer against new deposits paid to venues. The graph looked less like life and more like a scheme. I kept waiting for the part where I was crazy. I wanted it to be the case that grief had made me paranoid, that I was connecting dots because my pride was bruised by one misleading photo. But paranoia doesn't produce receipts, and pride doesn't schedule private rooms under another man's name. Some nights I'd stand in the doorway while she showered and stare at the clothes she'd worn home. No sweat marks, no gym dust, no tired. Just the scent of something expensive and a faint shimmer at the collarbone like highlighter for an audience. When she caught me watching, she'd smile and ask if I wanted to order in, like we could eat our way around the hole in our house. She started buying gifts for people I'd never met. Monogrammed candles, custom stationery, a bottle of champagne with a ribbon I recognized from one of those private rooms. Client care, she said, as if generosity counted double when it wasn't her money. I didn't explode. I cooled. That's the part one don't think she saw coming. I started tightening the bolts where I still had a wrench. Categories in the budget, notes in the app, reminders to myself about what love costs and what it doesn't. I counted because counting was the only thing that made me feel like I still lived here. By the time I got to the last tab of the spreadsheet, the story had written itself. It said I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a card on file, a quiet subscription fueling a season I wasn't invited to watch. I closed the laptop, listened to the apartment hum, and let the truth sit beside me like an unwelcome houseguest who decided to stay. Proof came by accident. The way you trip over a stone and realize it's part of something buried much deeper. It was a Tuesday already running long. Rachel was at a client dinner, and I was home trying to make sense of the week's receipts. I'd gotten into the habit of checking the banking app before bed. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see the ledger as it unfolded. That's when I saw it. A charge from a boutique hotel across town, time-stamped for the previous Saturday night. I stared at the entry for a long moment, hoping I was misreading it. The description was specific: room number, minibar charges, a late breakfast for 2, paid through my virtual card. I logged into the hotel's website and, with the right combination of guesswork and saved credentials, pulled the invoice. Double occupancy wasn't ambiguous. Neither was the checkout time, 11:42 a.m. The part that hollowed me out was how neatly it fit into the pattern. An early Saturday workout. Radio silence until afternoon. The faint scent of something unfamiliar when she came home. A friend of mine manages security for the parking garage across from the hotel. I called him, kept it casual. He owed me a favor. By the next afternoon, he'd sent me a set of logs. Rachel's license plate exited the garage at 1:47 a.m. Sunday morning. The corresponding footage showed her walking out hand in hand with Daniel Reed. Both smiling. Both moving with the kind of ease that comes from repetition, not novelty. I didn't need any more dots to connect. Financial records and camera footage had done the work for me. The next day, without ceremony, I began the separation of finances. She still had access to the joint account, but only for the bare essentials: mortgage, utilities, groceries. I revoked her permissions on my primary accounts and replaced shared passwords with ones I didn't write down. The credit card we used for household purchases became mine alone. Rachel noticed within a week. "Card's not working," she said one evening, tossing it onto the counter. "It's working," I told her. "Just not for everything anymore." Her brows knit. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done paying for things I don't get to be part of." I saw the flicker in her eyes. Annoyance disguised as confusion. Like what? Like private dining rooms booked under someone else's name. Like boutique hotels on weekends you tell me you're doing squats at 6 a.m. Like transfers to your sister labeled for preparations I've never been invited to. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't deny it. The family pressure started not long after. Her relatives began floating the Miami wedding idea in group chats, casually dropping in phrases like finalizing caterer and deposit deadlines. I ignored them until the asks became direct. Would I wire the deposit this week? Would I want to handle the champagne upgrade since I had a better palate? I typed the same answer 3 times before sending. I don't fund events I'm not part of. 2 days later, I got a call from Tom Bennett, her sister's fiancé. Tom is the kind of man who keeps receipts and not just the printed kind. He'd been handling logistics for the wedding and had started to notice charges on vendor invoices billed to my card. Live music bookings, decor deposits, private room rentals. "I thought you'd already approved this stuff," he said. "I didn't even know it existed." Tom paused, then lowered his voice. "I'm sending you something. You didn't get it from me." What landed in my inbox an hour later was a PDF portfolio from a decor supplier. A glossy sample spread of table arrangements, menus, and color palettes. On the second-to-last page was a photo, Rachel and Daniel standing side by side at a long table set for 2. The place cards at the head were printed with their names in the same script used on the menus. The invoice for that tasting dinner was itemized: 2 tasting menus, 2 wine pairings, and a dessert course labeled complimentary for the couple. My card had covered it. Any hope I had left dissolved right there, somewhere between the photograph and the final charge. The family format dinner from the restaurant photos wasn't just a work thing. It was a celebration, and I had been paying for it the whole time. That night, Rachel was staying at her sister's. I wrote an email, not to her but to myself, outlining conditions for any interaction going forward. Financial autonomy for both of us. Transparent accounting on shared costs. No commitments made without mutual agreement. And therapy if there was ever going to be anything worth salvaging. When she finally called the next evening, her voice was uncharacteristically soft. She said she'd moved in with her sister for now. She admitted carefully, as if saying the words too plainly might break her, that she'd gotten caught up in status, in the kind of lavish gestures that looked good in photos and felt like proof of something she couldn't define. That it had been easy to tap into the household budget to make it happen. I didn't argue. I just read her the list. "Those are the conditions," I said. "Without them, there's nothing to talk about." She didn't fight me, just said she needed to think. In the weeks that followed, the tone shifted. She closed her personal credit cards, took a part-time job at a boutique downtown, started keeping a ledger of her spending. The weekend workouts stopped. So did the unexplained transfers. We began discussing family events before they happened. Expenses came with receipts. I showed up at a couple of gatherings, small ones, nothing like the Miami production her family had been planning. I was there as a participant, not a wallet. The photo of her and Daniel at the table still exists somewhere online. I've left it there on purpose. Not to shame her, but to remind myself what it costs to pretend not to see. Because now I see everything. I didn't expect the quiet to be the hardest part. After Rachel moved in with her sister and the spending froze, the apartment sounded like a hotel at noon. Vacuum hum in the hallway, an elevator ding, a neighbor's dog nails skittering on the concrete. The noise outside threw the silence inside into relief. I kept the routines that made sense. Coffee at 6, a run on the boardwalk before the sun cooked the water, a shower, a clean shirt. I deleted the concierge emails, unsubscribed from restaurants with velvet curtains, and set my lock screen to something honest. The lake at dusk, flat and ordinary, felt like telling the truth to a mirror. Rachel called on a Sunday to say she had started therapy. She wanted to know if I would consider joint sessions, not to get back together, she said, but to learn how not to turn life into a ledger. I surprised us both by agreeing. We met on Tuesdays in a room that smelled like eucalyptus and clean books. The therapist asked for short answers and long pauses. When I tried to prosecute the case, she would lean forward and say, "Feelings, Ethan, not evidence." So I said the thing I hadn't said, that the photo wasn't the worst part. The worst part was being repositioned from partner to sponsor without anyone telling me the role had changed. Rachel stared at the rug and whispered, "I wanted to be the kind of person who didn't need help to look like I had a life." We built a shared document the therapist called a boundary map. It was unromantic in the way a fire escape is unromantic. Metal, exposed, and exactly what you use when the stairwell fills with smoke. Line by line. Autonomy for day-to-day money, receipts for shared bills, an opt-in rule for any event with a price tag bigger than groceries, and a blunt clause about honesty. If you feel the urge to hide it, name it out loud. On a different Tuesday, I asked a question I'd rehearsed, so often it had teeth marks in it. Were there others? Rachel didn't make me list the dates. She said, "I liked the way it felt to be the main character at a table." And then, quieter, "I didn't like myself there." It wasn't the confession I'd expected, but it was the one that made the rest of the story snap into place. Life ticked on in ordinary increments. I stopped measuring days by statements and learned the city's new smallness, where the sunlight hit the bike racks at 9, which taco trucks sold out by noon. The exact minute traffic on South Lamar loosened like a fist unclenching. I met Tom one evening for coffee. He apologized again for the invoices, then told me he and Rachel's sister were postponing Miami. "Smaller is saner," he said. I nodded, thinking that sanity and scale were inversely proportional more often than not. One night I opened the spreadsheet and didn't recognize the man who had made it. I didn't delete it. I archived it with the taxes and the photos that remind you who you were without asking you to be that person again. Rachel and I tried a family dinner. Her parents, her sister, Tom, and me, sitting at a long table at a place with no curtains and a chalkboard menu. No champagne pyramids. Just roasted chicken, loud silverware, and a waitress who called everyone Han. When the bill landed, for hands reached at once. I didn't flinch. That felt like a start. The photo of Rachel and Daniel stayed online. Once, late, I hovered over the report button and then closed the app. I wasn't the sheriff of the past, and the past didn't need a citation to exist. I left the image where it lived and chose a different anchor. A short note I had written the night I set the conditions. I pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like Texas. It read, simply, "Participation requires consent. Love is not credit." Months rolled by. We never got back what we had before, but we built something you could walk around inside without tripping over the furniture. We spoke plainly. We used the boundary map without being asked. And when the therapist asked us both what we wanted, I said, "A life that doesn't make me choose between dignity and company." Rachel said, "A life I don't have to stage." Daniel moved to Denver, according to someone at her office. I didn't ask for details. Every once in a while, I caught a flicker of old instinct, a wish to search, to prove, to collect. When that urge climbed the walls, I took it running. Austin has a way of reminding you the horizon is bigger than your living room. I kept a small ritual. On the first Saturday of each month, I opened the banking app and scrolled. Not hunting, just checking the lights. Mortgage, utilities, the banal heartbeat of a life. Paid, paid, paid. If an outing appeared, it was already discussed. If a gift was bought, it had a card with both our names or just hers, never mine by implication. On a cool morning in late fall, Rachel met me by the lake, paper cups in hand. She asked if we could try the kind of day we used to have when everything felt simple: coffee, a walk, nowhere to be. We made it to the pedestrian bridge before she stopped and said, "I want to apologize without defending." She took a breath. "I treated your care like a faucet. I thought it would run no matter what I turned on elsewhere." I didn't say, "You were right until you weren't." I said, "Thank you." We watched rowers thread the water like needles through cloth. There's no cinematic ending. No grand apology party. No mutual friends gasping as we announce anything at all. What we have is a contract in lowercase. Show up, say the quiet part out loud, pay for the things you pick, invite the person you're with into the rooms you enter. It is unglamorous and, most days, enough. Sometimes people ask why I stayed. I don't give them a speech about redemption arcs or the virtue of patience. I say I made a list of what I needed to live with myself and then checked whether staying met the list better than leaving. The answer surprised me. It still does. On nights when the elevator dings and the dog skitters and the city buzzes 5 stories below, I turn off the overhead lights and let the dark clean the edges of the room. I look at the magnet on the fridge. I look at the lake on my phone. I listen for the quiet and decide, again, that I can live with it. Or maybe, finally, it can live with me. I didn't plan a grand finale. Life doesn't hand you curtain calls. It hands you Tuesdays and bill reminders and the choice to answer your phone. The next Real test came on a random Thursday in December. A cold snap that made Austin feel like a different city. I was stirring chili on the stove when Rachel texted, "Heads up, my aunt's in town. Family dinner at Rose's tomorrow. You're invited if you want." "Who's paying?" I typed, then erased it. Old reflex. I tried again. "What time?" She called instead of replying. 7. I already told them we're splitting the bill by household. I can cover us or we can use the joint. Your call. Text me the estimate and I'll move it tonight. At Rose's, the candles were tea lights in recycled jars, not crystal towers. Rachel's aunt hugged me like I hadn't gone missing for half a year. Someone ordered queso for the table and nobody pretended it was plated art. When the check came, Rachel reached for her portion without glancing my way, like a runner who knows where the finish line is. Her sister started to protest, then stopped herself and nodded. A small apology tucked inside the motion. On the walk to the car, Rachel said, "Thank you for coming." "For what it's worth," I said. That felt like an actual dinner. She smiled in a way I trusted again, no angle to it, no performance. Me too. After that, the calendar shifted from red flags to ordinary dots. We still met the therapist, still checked the boundary map when things got fuzzy, but the temperature in the house came down. I found myself doing small repairs I'd postponed. Tightening a cabinet hinge, replacing a dim bulb, sewing a loose button on a jacket I almost tossed during the worst week. It sounds domestic because it was, and domestic felt radical after months of chaos. That photo, kept drifting into my orbit like space junk. I'd be tagged in a friend's birthday post and the algorithm would wedge the old image beside it. A ghost thumbnail of 2 people who had cost me my appetite for weeks. One afternoon I finally asked, "Do you want it gone?" Rachel knew which it was without me saying. "It's your call," she said. "I can't make the internet forget it. I can ask the original poster to remove it, but that's not the same as it never happening." "I know," I said. "I'm trying to decide if erasing the evidence makes it easier to rewrite the story." We left it, not out of spite but as a mile marker. When my chest tightened, I'd use it to check direction. If the image pulled me backward, I closed the app and took a walk. If it nudged me to keep the rules we'd drawn, I thanked the ache and went on with my day. In February, I ran into Daniel outside a coffee shop on South First. The world didn't slow down, and the sky didn't crack. He just looked at me and said, "Ethan," like a person noticing weather. He had a suitcase and that road-tired shuffle of someone between flights. "I'm sorry," he added after a beat. I believed him and didn't. Both can be true. "Take care," I said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't a performance either. He nodded, and we both stepped out of the way of a family shepherding 3 hot chocolates and a puppy that wanted to taste the whole sidewalk. That night I told Rachel. She went quiet in the way that means she's choosing careful words. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I didn't know he was in town." She showed me a thread on her phone. Old messages, unanswered, frozen in the gray. I keep it there to remind myself what I don't want. Spring loosened the city. Bluebonnets elbowed through the median, and the lake became a glossy loop of runners and strollers. We set up a shared calendar with just 3 categories: work, family, us. When something landed in family, it came with who, what, how much. When it landed in us, it meant we were both free and willing, not free and resentful. On a Saturday in April, my friends dragged me out to shoot hoops at the rec center. The game was sloppy, rim and no net, but it felt good to miss sh*ts that didn't matter. Afterward, we sat on the curb with paper cups of orange drink that pretended to be juice. They asked careful questions. I gave simple answers. One of them said, "You sound like you got yourself back." I didn't know until he said it that I had. Rachel, for her part, built a different muscle. She said no to things that used to define her. She passed on a bachelorette trip with a private boat and a hashtag. She suggested a potluck shower instead of a hotel ballroom. When people teased her, she smiled and pointed to the boundary map like it was a lighthouse. "I want to remember the people," she said once. "Not the invoices." We tried a weekend out of town. Nothing glossy, just a cabin near Wimberley with a porch and a stubborn door that needed a hip check to close. We read books. We burned the first batch of pancakes and ate them anyway. On the second morning, a storm rolled across the hills, and we watched the rain stitch the trees together. I thought about vows, not the big wedding ones, but the quiet daily versions. "I will answer honestly. I will ask plainly. I will not spend your name without you." On the drive back, Rachel said, "Do you think we've forgiven each other?" "I think we've stopped lying," I said. Forgiveness might be what grows in that clearing. In June, her sister married Tom under a live oak, no Miami skyline in sight. The band was a Bluetooth speaker. People cried anyway. When the dessert table ran out, we cut up the backup sheet cake in the kitchen with a serrated bread knife and served it on napkins. It was perfect because it fit. Late that night, after the send-off, Rachel and I stood in the venue's gravel lot listening to the cicadas slur their static. She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for staying long enough to see this version," she said. "I stayed long enough to see you choose it," I said. "That's different. There are still landmines. Some days a headline or a scent or a stray comment detonates a memory and the air goes sharp for an hour. On those days, we default to the basics. Water, a walk, a budget check, a sentence that starts with "I feel" instead of "you always." It's not magic. It's maintenance. People love a moral. I don't have one. I have a list taped inside a kitchen cabinet. Pay attention. Don't outsource your self-respect. Ask before you agree. Make room for ordinary joy, the kind with tacos and mismatched chairs and a bill you can split without ceremony. Keep a photo or 2 that tell the hard truth. Not to punish, but to remember that you survived it and decided what to do next. On some evenings, when the light hits the living room just right and the city hums like a distant engine, I'll catch Rachel looking at me with that unangled smile. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't promise a future. It just says, right now, we are exactly who we say we are. For a life measured in Tuesdays, that's more than enough.